Satan's Dare. Its author, former U.S. Senator and president of the Heritage Foundation, U.S. Senator Jim DeMint is here with us. Jim, it's a pleasure to have you with us on BlazeTV. How are you?
Steve, I'm doing great, and I appreciate your endorsement of the book. Your quote has been used extensively already, so grateful for you, and thanks for the chance to talk about it.
You bet, man. I thought that the premise of the book, I'm always fascinated when we look for unique ways to tell a tale as old as time, right? And I like the fact that you went for that approach with Satan's Dare. So without spoiling everything, kind of give our audience a tease. What is the unique approach that you went with here?
Well, first of all, Steve, the book's not political at all, but it has huge implications to American politics, because everything we believe, not only in America, but Western civilization, is based on Judeo-Christian values. And I believe America is declining because the Christian church is declining. But the premise of Satan's Dare is getting at answering the question of why God created a world so full of suffering and tragedy and death. And Satan's Dare is based on the first chapter of Job, where Satan dares God, if you don't bless Steve or Jim, if you don't bless them, they will curse you and worship me. And so it's this whole idea of knowing good and evil, that when we choose God, when we pray, when we praise, when we come together as believers and obey, we defeat Satan. And the implications there, if you go through the book, you will see real life characters living out what happens, what are the questions they ask, what are the answers they come up with when you start asking, why do we have to go through this mess here in this physical world?
I like the fact that you used real life characters to tell this story. I think one of the things that is causing the church to decline in influence, Jim, as you just said, is I think in many respects we have put forth this notion that, or at least the culture believes that we have, that you have to attain a certain status of knowledge or piety or holiness in order to seek and connect with God. That And really, it's the other way around. It's that connection that increases us in knowledge, holiness, piety. Meaning that there is never anything we can do on our own to actually meet God's standard of approval. It's when we recognize that He changes us from the inside out, changes what we see, what we seek. And so, one of the main characters in your book, he's largely defending the faith basically on intellectual grounds, and is successful at doing so until it hits home with a personal tragedy. And now he's got to do this math in his own life, and that's kind of where the rubber meets the road for a lot of people, right?
It really, and that's the crux of the book, is you have two characters who suffer great tragedy. One becomes the world's most famous atheist. The other, he argues with God, he complains, but because of a loving wife and loving friends, that he keeps hold of his faith. But these two end up in a debate where people looking in can see how Christians and the Bible can be aligned with science. Not that science is always true, but these characters are looking at what does the Bible really say? Can it be aligned with science? When in effect, science has proved that life in this physical world is way too complicated to have happened by accident. So I think Christians will have their faith confirmed, but any honest skeptic who reads the book will have to give this a second thought. But the church now, Steve, is not even defending the basics, that there is a God, that God created this world, the Bible is true, and that Jesus is a way to salvation.
One of my great frustrations, Jim, as a daily cultural commentator, I got into this originally, we have this sign over me, truth be told here. I got into this to contend for the truth. And it seems as if more and more we just can't be bothered by the truth. That we just memory hole everything. I mean, a Nation of Islam guy kills a cop, memory hold like it never happened. A white male of all things. So every time there's a gun tragedy, we have to politicize it, right? A white male turns a hotel room in the most surveilled city in America, Las Vegas, into a sniper's nest, opens fire, commits the worst mass shooting in American history, memory hold. We don't care what his motivations are, why it happened, how it happened. It's like it never happened. We just memory hold things. The truth just seems like it's been chloroformed. And that's so frustrating to me. And that's what I was attracted to about your book most of all. There's a reckoning. I just want the debate. I'm pretty confident if we let the lion out of its cage, the lion will defend itself just fine. We can't even often get to actual reckonings and debates in our culture anymore, Jim.
Well, this is a great point. I think a lot of biblical scholars won't like this book at all because the characters ask questions and come up with theories that are not traditional. I've found that asking questions and searching confirms my faith, even when I can't get answers, because you can look at, truth in the Bible of whether there's 6-day creation or 6 periods. A lot of that's fun to look at, but it really doesn't matter. What we need to understand is that God created this earth, and science will prove it if we'll look at it. But Steve, you're right. Truth is not relevant today, whether it's in cultural commentators or in politics. But truth leads to freedom, and freedom is seeking virtue. It's also seeking truth itself. And if this disappears from the foundations, like Psalm 11 says, that if the foundations are destroyed, what will the righteous do? And that's what we're doing in America. We're treating the symptoms. Why is there violence? Why is there racism or whatever we're trying to create here? These are symptoms, and we just need to realize, particularly as believers, that the foundations are being destroyed, and we need to address those. But like you said, not just with teaching theology, but let's have a real debate about what's true. What does the Bible say? What does science say? What does the culture say? Let's have an honest debate, but that's not happening today. And I think if people read this book, they will get the confidence to at least go out and have the debate and answer the questions.
So you spent a good amount of time in Washington, D.C., in the Senate, so you're used to zero truth environments. All my life I've heard this is the most important election of our lifetimes, right?
Right.
And when I was younger, it's funny, I'm more conservative now. I'm less partisan than I was when I was younger. When I was younger, though, I really thought the world would end as we've known it if Bill Clinton won and George H.W. Bush did not. And yet, I look back on those years, and there were things I disagreed with Bill Clinton on, obviously, but frankly, my life wasn't much different from him being president or George H.W. Bush. I remember being in my living room, on my knees as a baby Christian, praying that God will allow George W. Bush to win Ohio and not John Kerry, because that could be the end of America. But frankly, a few things were different, but for me, living in Iowa, things weren't much different. The 8 years George W. Bush was president compared to Barack Obama. Gas was more, but really that was about it. Yeah. So I bring that up to say I have had numerous frustrations with Donald Trump's personality over the last few years. But man, I'm looking at gas lines now. So we got gas lines. We have no border. We were cutting peace deals with Saudis and Israelis a year ago. Now Israel is a war front. On every single front, energy policy, border policy, crime, everything. The difference of where the country was with Trump as president pre-COVID compared to just what has transpired in barely 100 days of Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. That is a hell of a lot different, Jim, than life transpired differently in the time, the transitions between Bushes and Clintons and Clintons and Bushes and Obamas. Things are dramatically different in this country right now already.
Well, it's a perfect setup here because I came to the House after the 98 elections, and we could work with Democrats then. We were arguing about how much the government should spend, how much the government should tax. But now it's different completely, Steve. We can't even agree on what is reality. what is truth, basic biology. I mean, and in fact, the facts don't matter. And like you said, we should be able to have a debate. We can't have a debate now about the basics. And that's because this idea of absolute truth is disappearing from our culture and even from a lot of the Christian church. And if you don't begin with the concept of truth, of what is real, then you really can't solve these other problems. Because if you say America is systemically racist, there's no facts to prove that.
Right.
In fact, I've lived long enough to know that the only systemic racism left in America is in the Democratic Party. And certainly they're racist around, but just as Tim Scott was saying, our country's not racist. In fact, we were on a trajectory for years improving until, in fact, the left accelerated their identity politics and the victimization. But that's what's so frustrating today. I think it has taken a turn. Like you said, I've been concerned when Clinton was elected, when Obama was elected, and the second term of Bush. But now it's just different. The level of spending, the level of debt, what we're doing to our currency.
Like I was crushed after we lost those elections. But a year or two in the new administration, my life really wasn't that much different, okay? Life in America is dramatically different right now than it was pre-COVID with Trump as president compared to, set even COVID aside, what the Biden administration is doing on every other front. Life in America is dramatically different right now, Jim, more than I've ever seen. This fast. There used to be a pervasive morality, in a sense. A lot of us disobeyed that, but we knew where home was. Now, the pervasive morality is the complete opposite. In effect, if you're trying to live a good and moral life, you're likely to be accused of hate or whatever. So particularly, this book is addressed primarily to Christians, what we call the body of Christ. We need to come home. We need to have confidence in what we believe. We need to see this country as a gift God has given us that we're stewards over. But this all begins with understanding the truth in the Bible and being able to defend the idea that there is absolute truth in this world. There is real law. All of these things emanate from the Bible. If we turn away from that, the foundations are lost. Former U.S. Senator Jim DeMint, the new book is Satan's Dare. Was proud to endorse it. It's a fascinating way to contemporize and bring home a lot of the meta-philosophical debates we're having. And Senator, also thank you for your endorsement of Fauci and Bargan as well. It was a pleasure to have you with us on the show today.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you. Same to you.